Okay, so we are going to preview the TTEC strategy. So, this is a body paragraph strategy only. I want you to understand that you can't use this for anything else, only body paragraphs. So, the T stands for transition word. So, transition words are things like first, for one, example, things like that, where you are starting your paragraph. Actually, if you look in Classroom, I have dropped a material of an infographic that gives you a bunch of different transition words that you could use. You always need to transition into your paragraphs for your reader to truly understand and for your paragraphs to flow from one idea to another. Make sure if you use one like, for example, then you may use on the next one, another example is. So use similar transition words so it flows throughout each paragraph in a very easy way. The next one that we are talking about is the topic sentence. So what you're really asking yourself here is, what is my main point? So this is going to be your main idea in sentence form. So your main idea needs to be completely exclusive. You're not mixing your ideas together at this point. So if you are only talking about your high school experience, you're only talking about that. You're not talking about both things like high school experience and social media. If you have two main ideas, you can't mix them together in this paragraph, only one idea at a time. So the next thing that we're looking at is explaining our topic, but make sure make sure when you are explaining your topic that you are thinking of good examples. So a acronym that we use in the English world to kind of come up with examples is HELPS, or HELPS. Basically, what this stands for is historical. So these are things like in history, like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln went through this. And then the next one is entertainment. So this can be Cardi B, Kim Kardashian, an athlete of some sort. Literary and books. So if you want to talk about like Katniss Everdeen, or if you want to talk about Anne Frank or somebody that you've read about. P stands for personal. This is the one we're most familiar with. And then the last one is science. So if you had scientific evidence or an experiment you knew about, you could write about that. You must choose one of these, whether it's a personal example or anything else. You need to make sure that it's no longer than 3 to 5 sentences. This can be really easy to like extend yourself out, but remember that you only have 26 lines to get your point across. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. And when we are looking at C, what this stands for is close it out. So how are you closing out your paragraph? And the number one question I like to ask myself when I am doing this is, what did you learn, or what could somebody learn from the example that you gave? So the example is going to come from helps. So if you give a historical example, then you need to explain why that's relevant. So say you were like, yeah, Katniss Everdeen went through this really hard time. This is what you can learn from that. And this is how it ties back to the topic that I am writing about. So just make sure that you're very specific in ending that, because you're going to transition into a new idea. So they need to know your old idea is done. So shifting down, I want to go ahead and give you an example of what this looks like. So this is an example that I used last week when we did the organization about peer pressure, and I showed you my essay. So my main idea one from that brainstorm about peer pressure was how it negatively affected my high school experience. So I am only going to talk about this subject in this paragraph. This TTEC is all one paragraph, all one idea. So just keep that in mind, that you can't talk about anything else other than that main idea right there. So I may go look through my transition list. I'm saying, okay, what transition seems good here? Since it's my first idea, I'm going to say something like, maybe my first example is, or one example is. So I think the one I'm going with is one example. So I'm going to write that in. That's all I'm doing is just writing those 2 words in for my transition. Now I'm looking at the next T, so my topic. So, one example of peer pressure affecting me in high school was when I cheated on a paper. So I'm writing that in. And if you notice, the 2 T's actually go together in one sentence. So your transition words, so if you were to say, like, for example, comma, then you're going to explain that in the topic sentence, but it's all one sentence together. Um, so I actually noticed I spelled the wrong effect. So I'm going to go in and fix that. So negatively, when I cheated on a paper. So I'm going to explain more about that in the E. So it's just a quick overview of what topic I am talking about. And then I'm going to move on into my explanation. So my explanation shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 sentences. So friends convinced me to cheat on an assignment. That is one sentence. All people involved got caught and punished for dishonesty. Second sentence. If you notice here in my example, I'm not giving you who it was, all the details. Like when I had a personal narrative about this, I told you all the things. Here, you're skimming the details and giving me the highlights so I have a good example. So I'm just going to finish out kind of my explanation of everything. So here I'm saying things like all the people involved got caught and got punished for dishonesty. And when I'm really thinking about this, that's the whole point that I want to make, is that we got punished for something that we did. And peer pressure was the kind of like the cause, and I told you what the effect was. So really it should be like a short, like 1 to 2 sentences. If it's more than that, you need to really kind of evaluate, are these details important? Are the names of the people really important? Or is that something that you could cut out so you can save lines and have better explanations in the future for something else? Now we're looking at C, and that is the close it out. So I'm telling you, the lesson that I learned is that this negatively impacted the way that teachers trusted me in the future. So that's the lesson that I learned, that peer pressure can cause problems that would cause me issues in the future. So make sure that when you are doing a close it out, that you are really paying attention to the lesson or what we can learn from the example, not necessarily just explaining more of the example. Because if you do that, then your reader's not going to really understand why it is relevant. So just make sure that you keep that in mind.